She lived on the streets, invisible to everyone. People passed her by without looking, without asking her name, without ever wondering about her story. But, on that cloudy afternoon, a black luxury car stopped right in front of her. A man stepped out, black, powerful, dressed in a tailored suit, and simply said, "Would you like to come with me to a wedding?" She had no idea. It was his ex-fiancée's wedding, and no one, absolutely no one, expected what she would do at that altar. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Now, get ready, because what you're about to witness will stay with you for a long time. If you approve, I'll now begin Chapter 1, The Invisible Woman and the Billionaire's Invitation, with at least 600 words, ending on a strong emotional cliffhanger. Shall I go ahead and write Chapter 1? Rainwater dripped from the edge of her worn hoodie as she sat against the wall of the Fifth Avenue bakery. Her name was Ava, but to most she was just that homeless woman by the crosswalk. She had been living on the streets of New York for over 2 years, holding on to memories and to a tattered backpack with everything she owned. People passed her like wind, fast, cold, and indifferent, until he stopped. A sleek black Mercedes Maybach pulled up, engine purring like a panther. The window lowered, and from inside, a voice calmly asked, "Is your name Ava?" She looked up slowly, blinking through rain. The man who stepped out was nothing like anyone who'd ever spoken to her on that corner. Tall, black, impeccably dressed, confident, calm. His name was Donovan Brooks. And Ava would only learn later that he was one of the youngest black billionaires in America. Real estate, tech, global influence, he had it all. But at that moment, he just looked at her like a human being. "I don't want anything from you," he said, crouching down. "But I'd like to invite you somewhere warm, somewhere honest." Ava furrowed her brow. "You think I'm some kind of project?" she murmured. "No," he replied softly. "I think you deserve a reason to remember who you are." She hesitated. But his tone wasn't pitying. It was steady, familiar, like someone who had once been on the edge, too. Inside the car, she didn't speak. The seats were warm. The scent of cedarwood and expensive leather surrounded her. Donovan handed her a soft towel and water bottle, but didn't push. He just drove. "You really don't recognize me, do you?" he asked with a slight smile, watching her in the rearview mirror. She shook her head slowly. "Should I?" He let out a breath, nostalgic and bitter all at once. "You were kind to me once, before the world was." That sentence haunted her. They stopped in front of a luxury boutique. 2 stylists greeted them at the door. Ava froze. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Donovan turned to her. "It's a wedding." Her heart dropped. "Yours?" He looked away for a moment. "No. Someone I used to love. I want you to come with me." Ava laughed bitterly. "Why me?" He looked at her, eyes deep with something between pain and purpose. "Because the people in that room will never expect it. And because you helped me remember who I was, once, when I had nothing." His words hit her like thunder. She didn't remember him, but somehow she believed him. She stood in the fitting room an hour later, wearing a gown she never thought she'd touch. Her face was fresh, her hair softly styled, her eyes still guarded. But something inside her stirred. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a glimpse of who she used to be. Before loss, before survival replaced dreams. And as she walked out of the boutique, now standing beside Donovan in heels she never imagined wearing again, she whispered, "Who exactly are you trying to prove something to?" He looked down at her. His answer was quiet. "Myself." The chandelier lights glistened like frozen stars overhead, but Ava barely noticed. Her breath caught in her throat as the room stood still, as if the moment itself was holding its breath. She could feel the weight of every gaze, every judgment, every whisper starting to curl in the air, But none of it mattered compared to the woman standing across from her, the bride. Her name was Celeste Jordan, and from the photos lining the walls of the reception hall, Ava could tell she was admired. Poised, a walking masterpiece in a fitted white gown that shimmered with crystals. But now, Celeste's hands trembled around her bouquet. Her eyes were wide, not in awe, in shock, in recognition. "Ava?" she mouthed silently, as if she were seeing a ghost. Donovan leaned down and whispered, "You okay?" Ava didn't answer. Her heart pounded. Something inside her cracked open. Why did the bride know her name? Before she could speak, an older woman, likely Celeste's mother, swept over with a forced smile. "And who is this stunning guest?" she asked, eyes darting between Ava's dress and her face. "This is Ava," Donovan said smoothly. "My date." The woman's expression barely flinched, but her eyes hardened for a second. Quick, calculating. "Ava," she repeated. "Lovely name." But her voice said otherwise. Celeste stood frozen at the altar, watching everything unfold. The groom, a tall, clean-cut man with the sharp features and a familiar sadness in his eyes, whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. Ava clutched the fabric of her dress and turned toward Donovan. "Tell me the truth. What is this?" He looked at her, not with malice, not even manipulation, with grief. "I wanted to show them something," he said. "But not at your expense. If you want to leave, I'll take you right now." But she didn't leave. Something had awakened inside her, a need to know, to understand, to remember. As the evening went on, Ava kept feeling eyes on her. Celeste's, the groom's, even one of the servers who gave her a look of surprise as if he, too, recognized her. She couldn't eat, could barely speak. Then, as she stood by the garden terrace for air, a voice broke the silence. "You don't remember me, do you?" Ava turned sharply. It was the groom. His name was Anthony Rivera, and now, up close, there was something in his face she couldn't deny, a memory brushing against the edges of her past. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "It's okay. I wouldn't expect you to. It was a long time ago. You helped me once. After school. When my brother got arrested, and I didn't know where to go, you brought me food, sat with me, told me not to give up." She blinked, stunned. "I did that?" He nodded. "You probably did it for a lot of people. You just don't remember, but we do." Ava felt tears sting her eyes. Her past, the part before the streets, before the pain, was starting to speak again, and people she never knew she helped, had never forgotten. Ava stared at Celeste's trembling hand, the one that had just gripped her wrist like a lifeline, or a warning. "What do you mean? If I remember?" Ava asked, her voice suddenly hoarse. Celeste looked around nervously. Guests moved inside the ballroom, laughing over wine and cake, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside the doors. Celeste stepped closer. Her perfume was expensive, but Ava could smell something beneath it. Fear. "That night, years ago," Celeste whispered, "you were there, and if you remember it, if you speak about it, Donovan could lose everything." Ava's chest tightened. Her eyes locked onto Celeste's. "I don't remember, but now, I need to." Celeste stepped back, clearly shaken. "Then don't say I didn't warn you." Back inside the ballroom, the music had shifted. Softer now. Donovan was speaking with someone near the stage. A man in a gray suit with a permanent smirk and the posture of someone used to being in control. As Ava approached, she noticed the tension in Donovan's jaw, the way his smile never reached his eyes. The man turned to Ava, scanning her slowly. "Well, well, you must be the statement of the evening," he said. "I'm Charles Landon, CEO of the investment firm backing Donovan's expansion project, and you are." Before Ava could speak, Donovan answered sharply. "She's with me." Charles raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I figured. But I meant, who is she?" Ava forced a smile. "I'm someone who remembers things others try to forget." Charles's smirk faded slightly. Later that night, Donovan led Ava to a quiet lounge area, away from the whispers, away from Charles, away from Celeste's eyes. "I owe you answers," he said, pouring 2 glasses of water. Ava sat, her body tense. "Celeste said if I remembered what happened, you could lose everything." He didn't flinch. "She's not wrong," Donovan said quietly, "but the truth doesn't scare me. Not anymore." He looked at her like a man about to rip open an old wound. "It was a winter night, 10 years ago. I was still cleaning offices at that downtown law firm. You were the girl who used to leave coffee on the lobby bench and put your hoodie on strangers when they passed out on the sidewalk." Ava blinked. "I remember. Giving away my hoodie. I had 2. Donovan nodded. "You saw a fight happen that night, behind that same building. You were there." The image came back, blurred, shaky, but real. A man being shoved, blood on the concrete, a girl screaming, Ava hiding in the shadows. "You were there," Donovan repeated, "and you saw that I wasn't the one who threw the punch." Her hands trembled in her lap. I saw someone else," Ava whispered. "A white guy in a navy coat." Donovan exhaled. "Charles Landon's son." Silence. Ava felt the floor drop beneath her. Ava sat in stunned silence, the echoes of Donovan's words still ringing in her ears. "I need you to testify." The memory he'd reawakened was no longer a blur. It was real. It was vivid. And it was terrifying. She remembered the alley, the shouting, the figure in the navy coat throwing the punch, and Donovan, trying to break it up, not cause it. But at the time, Ava hadn't come forward. She was just a broke teenager, living from shelter to shelter. Sure, no one would believe a girl like her over a wealthy white family. So she stayed quiet, and he paid the price. Now, it was all coming back. "I can't," she whispered. Donovan's shoulders stiffened. His eyes, usually calm, flickered with something deeper. Not anger. Disappointment. "I didn't bring you here for revenge," he said. "I brought you because I thought maybe you were still the same girl who saw what was right." Ava's eyes welled up. "You don't know what it's like. Back then, I was nothing. I had no voice, and now I barely exist. I'm nobody." Donovan leaned in. "You're not nobody. You're the reason I survived that place. That punch almost ended my life. But your kindness, that hoodie, the food, the way you looked at me like I mattered, that saved me." Ava bit her lip hard, her hands clenched. "I'm not asking you to fight for me," he added. "I'm asking you to fight for you, for who you were, for what was stolen from both of us." That night, Ava returned to the apartment Donovan had arranged for her. Just for a few days, he said. A place to rest, to think. But the thoughts didn't stop. She stood in front of the mirror in a silk robe she didn't feel she deserved, looking at the clean face, the washed hair, the skin she'd almost forgotten was hers. She didn't recognize this version of herself. Then her eyes caught something behind her. An envelope. It was on the nightstand. No name, just a wax seal. Inside was a photo. A photo of that night, blurry, shot from a security cam, but clear enough to see Donovan on the ground, and someone else throwing the punch. Not him. Ava dropped the photo, her breath hitching. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "They buried this, because your voice was never meant to matter." The next morning, she called Donovan. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll testify." He didn't say anything for a long moment, then simply, "Thank you." But that moment of peace didn't last. Later that day, a black SUV pulled up outside the building where Ava was staying. She was on the way down the stairs when a man in a navy coat stepped into the hallway. The same kind of coat from 10 years ago. "Miss Rivers?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice wary. He handed her a small envelope, nodded, and walked away. Inside was a card, engraved, from Celeste. It read, "Please don't do this. You have no idea what you'll destroy. Charles isn't the only one with something to lose. I am too." Ava stared at the card for a long time. Ava stood in the doorway, heart pounding as Charles Landon loomed in front of her. His posture was relaxed, but the smile on his face wasn't warm. It was calculated, controlled, dangerous. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "This little act of yours," he began, glancing around the apartment Donovan had set up for her, "is cute. Really. A modern-day Cinderella moment." He turned back to her. "But you and I both know the world doesn't work that way." Ava didn't speak. Charles reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Thick, heavy. "Here's everything I know about you," he said, dropping it on the table. "Every shelter you've stayed in, every petty citation, mental health reports, even the time you were falsely accused of theft in 2018. He tapped the folder. "This is what I'll release if you go near a courtroom." Ava stared at it. Cold washed over her skin. But deeper than the fear was the anger, a spark that had been waiting years to reignite. "You came all this way to scare a woman who used to sleep on sidewalks?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. "I came to remind you what's at stake," Charles replied. "Donovan thinks he's untouchable now, but that's because he forgot who built the stairs he's walking on." Ava stepped forward, closing the distance. "And you think I'm still the girl who had no power, no voice?" Charles didn't answer. His silence was confirmation. "I was silent once," she said. "It cost Donovan everything. It cost me my soul. I'm not making that mistake again." Charles's jaw tensed, but Ava didn't move. She let him leave first. Later that night, Ava met Donovan on the rooftop of his penthouse, the city skyline glowing behind them like a million broken promises. "I saw him," she said. "He threatened me." Donovan's face went cold. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "He thinks I'll break if my past is exposed." He looked at her, truly looked at her. "Will you?" "No," she said, "because I've already lived through it. There's nothing he can take from me that I haven't already survived." Donovan exhaled, something shifting in his eyes. Admiration, yes, but something more. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "Not this time." The following week moved fast. Donovan's lawyers prepared the case. The photo from the envelope, recovered from an old security archive Donovan had secretly been searching for, was now solid evidence. Ava's memory filled in the gaps. But as word leaked about the case, the world reacted. Online, whispers turned to headlines. Tech mogul versus Wall Street elite. People began to choose sides. Ava's name started trending, and the past she thought she'd buried became public discussion. Some defended her bravery. Others mocked her, calling her a street rat with a savior complex. Through it all, she stayed quiet, focused, steady, until Celeste showed up at her door. "I begged you not to do this," Celeste said, mascara running down her cheeks. "You begged me to stay silent," Ava corrected. "There's a difference." Celeste's voice cracked. "If this goes public, Charles will fall, and so will my family. My mother's name, my father's reputation. I've spent my life living in that man's shadow." Ava's voice softened. "Then why protect him?" "Because I don't know who I am without this life." Ava looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe it's time you find out." When the world returned, it came back in fragments. Bright lights, beeping monitors, the sterile scent of antiseptic. Ava blinked slowly, trying to sit up. Her head throbbed, her ribs ached, but she was alive. And beside her bed, asleep in a chair with his head in his hands, was Donovan. She whispered his name. He jerked awake instantly, rushing to her side. "Ava, you're okay. Thank God." "What happened?" she croaked. "There was a car," he said. "Hit and run. The doctor said it could have been worse, but you're here. That's all that matters." Ava looked at him, then at her hands. She was bandaged, bruised, but beneath the pain was something deeper, determination. "Did they delay the hearing?" she asked. Donovan hesitated. "They canceled it. For now. Said it was too dangerous. There's no official link between Charles and the car, but of course there isn't, Ava cut in. That's how people like him move. Donovan reached for her hand. You don't have to keep fighting. Not for me. She met his eyes. I'm not fighting for you anymore. I'm fighting because I finally know who I am. 2 days later, she left the hospital, and 2 days after that, she stood at a press conference podium, surrounded by lights, cameras, reporters, and the eyes of a nation ready to listen. She wasn't wearing the designer dress Donovan had offered. She was wearing her hoodie, the same kind she used to give away, the same kind she wore when the world forgot she existed. My name is Ava Rivers, she began. I used to sleep under bridges. I used to dig through trash for food. And I used to believe that silence was safer than truth. But today, I'm choosing the truth. Not just for Donovan Brooks, but for every person who's ever been told their voice doesn't matter. She held up the photo. This is evidence that was buried because the man in power wanted it to disappear. But I remember. I saw what happened that night, and I refused to stay silent 1 second longer. The room erupted with flashes, shouts, questions. Ava stood strong. She wasn't invisible anymore. The case went viral. The photo was authenticated. Public opinion flipped overnight. Charles Landon issued a statement. Cold, corporate, denying involvement. But cracks began to show. Investigations reopened. Whistleblowers emerged. One by one, the pillars of his empire began to fall. Celeste, under public pressure, stepped forward and confirmed Ava's account, tearfully, publicly, and behind the scenes. Ava's life began to transform, but not in the way most expected. She didn't cash in on the media frenzy, didn't sign any book deals. Instead, she partnered with Donovan to open the Ava Initiative, a program dedicated to helping homeless women rediscover their voice, their worth, and their path. Ava stood before the first graduating class, eyes full of tears. You're not what they called you, she told them. You're not your worst day. You are possibility. You are power. And your story is just beginning. The crowd of women, most of them once invisible like her, stood and applauded. Donovan watched from the back, silent, full of something rare, peace. But one conversation still had to happen. It was late. The city was quiet. Ava and Donovan stood on the rooftop where so much had begun. I never asked, she said softly. Why did you choose me that day? He smiled. Because when I was a broken kid with nothing, you gave me your hoodie. That was 10 years ago. And I never forgot the warmth. She looked away for a moment. Do you ever think about what could have happened if I'd spoken up back then? He gently touched her hand. We can't change the past, but you changed everything now, and maybe that's even more powerful. She nodded slowly. And what about us? She asked, barely above a whisper. He stepped closer. That depends on what you want. She smiled, the kind of smile that comes from being seen, from surviving, from finally believing in yourself. I want to remember who I was, and who I'm becoming. He took her hand in his. Then let's walk forward together. Ava stood beneath the rising sun, her breath visible in the early morning chill. The ribbon in her hand fluttered slightly. Red, soft, symbolic. Behind her stood a building that hadn't existed a year ago. Not when she was sleeping under overpasses, not when she was too afraid to speak. But now, it stood tall. 3 stories of glass, stone, and strength. The Ava Rivers Women's Center. Today was the official opening. Donovan stood beside her in a charcoal suit, his hand steady on her shoulder. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered. But Ava's mind wasn't on them. It was on the girl she used to be. The one with tangled hair and cracked lips. The one who clutched a hoodie for warmth and looked away when people made eye contact. The one who thought the world had already decided her story was over. And now, she was standing in front of a place built with her name. She cut the ribbon. Cheers erupted, balloons flew, and a choir of formerly homeless women, all graduates of her program, sang Ain't No Mountain High Enough, with full hearts and tears streaming down their faces. Ava closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. Later that night, she and Donovan returned to the rooftop one last time. "So," he said, watching the city lights below, "do you feel like a hero yet?" Ava chuckled. "No, I feel like I'm finally free." He smiled. "You know, when I first saw you again, part of me was still trying to prove something. To myself, to Celeste, to the world. And now? Now, I just want to build something real, with people who remember the rain, the hard nights, the weight of being unseen." She turned to him. "That's how you change the world, one person at a time." He nodded, then pulled something from his coat pocket, a small, faded object. It was the hoodie. She gasped softly. "You kept it?" "I kept it close," he said, "because it reminded me that kindness from the right person at the worst time can save a life." She took it in her hands, fingers trembling. Then without a word she hugged him, not because she owed him anything, but because they had saved each other. Months later, a story broke. Charles Landon had been indicted. Whistleblowers, evidence, old settlements unsealed. The mask had cracked, and everything beneath it had been ugly. Celeste quietly disappeared from the public eye. She sent Ava a letter, handwritten, no return address. "Thank you for having the courage I didn't. Maybe now I can start again too." Ava never wrote back, but she kept the letter, folded, tucked inside the hoodie Donovan had saved. Because every story needs reminders of where you've been, of who you once were, of the voices you chose to hear, and the ones you chose to use. Ava Rivers was once invisible. Now she's unforgettable. She didn't fight for fame, she fought for truth and changed lives in the process. And maybe, just maybe, her voice is a reminder to all of us. Your past does not define your worth. Your pain does not erase your power, and your voice, yes, yours, can change the course of everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Let's keep these stories alive, together.